Hello everyone, this is Arrow, and welcome back to Sundown Moon Up Podfics. Today we'll be continuing Fuck Bullies by RandomWeirdCat, Chapter 23. Warning, there's blood, self-hurt, and angst in this. He's 9 years old. Inko finally told him the truth about his father. He abandoned them because he didn't want them anymore. Inko reassured him that she would never leave him and she'd be right at his side. Izuku spent the day in his room. It was Saturday, so he didn't have to leave. He lays on his bed and stares up at the roof with a blank look. It didn't surprise or upset him that his father had left him. Everything was fine until he went to the doctor and he was revealed quirkless. It was his fault. Mom was never happy anymore. It was his fault she had to keep losing boyfriends. It was his fault no one likes him. The teachers grew crueler. They picked at every little thing he'd do. If he took notes, they'd call on him. They tried to force him to read from his notebook. They made him read it once, and that day he was pushed down a flight of stairs. If they saw him looking out the window, he would have to answer all the questions on the board. They called on him every time to read out loud. If he stuttered, he'd have to read the next 2 paragraphs. Kachan kept going further and further with the bullying. He snarled and beat Izuku whenever he caught him. Izuku tried to run and hide. It never worked, but ever since Tsubatsu left school, he had a better chance of running. Still, it didn't help a lot. The teachers ignored Kachan and the other kids and praised them for their quirks and how smart they were. Even though Izuku was at the top of his classes, he still never got praised. The teachers picked at all his homework and asked him to stay after school so they could interrogate him, asking how he got a perfect 100 on all his work. If he cheated, if he asked for help. Izuku sits up and winces. His chest and back still hurt from the beating that Kachan and the others gave him yesterday. He rolls out of bed and searches in between the mattress. His fingers cut open and he grabs the small razor. He pulls down his shorts to expose his waist. There were so many cuts and scars already. This was the only place on his body that no one would be able to see. With a swift and steady hand, he slices his skin and drags the razor around. He watches as the blood bubbles and spills down. He grabs the copper towel under his bed and presses it against the cut. He glances at the door to make sure it's absolutely locked. Izuku glances at his chest. There were quite a few scars littered his skin from all the attacks. He cuts along the scars and bruises and watches the blood. He shook with relief. The pain meant he was still here, and he could pay for being alive. He mutters apologies and cuts another line. Izuku lays down on the floor and stares under the bed. A collection of stained towels and old razor blades were pushed in the middle of his bed and wrapped in a ball. He had to make sure his mom never saw. He couldn't make her cry. He couldn't bring another burden onto her, not after he forced her to stay with him. Inko was too kind to leave a quirkless Deku like him behind, even if he deserves to be abandoned. Izuku curls up and clenches his fist around the razor. It slices his palm open. He takes a deep breath and dries the blood off the razor. He stuffs it in between the mattress and glances at the floor and notices the blood. He sighs and looks around for his bandages. Izuku's hands dug into his hips. He clenches his scarred palms and tried to feel for his razor. He looked around and pats the bed. A hand on his head makes him jolt. He looks up at All for One. The man doesn't say anything. He's probably disgusted that Izuku of all people had his brother's quirk. He might be pitying him. Izuku didn't want pity. He doesn't need it. He's fine. Izuku bows his head and kept his eyes locked on his shaking hands. All for One's shoulders shook. The man places his hand on his own chest and takes deep breaths and stands up and walks towards the door. Finally. Someone was leaving him. Izuku deserves to be left behind. He wasn't worth anyone's time. Kachan was telling him the truth. The others were telling him. The teachers were telling him. That's why they all hurt him. That's why his mom ignored everything and let him bleed and cry. That's why Kachan burned. Izuku's eyes widen and his lip quivers. Kachan wasn't hurting him. No one hurt him. He's fine. It's all fine. They were messing around. It's all better now. He has a quirk that he doesn't deserve, and he's going to be a hero. Nobody hurt him. Nobody burned him. Nobody... A burst of pressure explodes into the wall. Izuku screams and covers his head. Is Kachan here? No, he couldn't be. There's another burst of pressure. Izuku reaches down to his waist and presses the tips of his fingers into the most recent cuts. He could feel blood. A hand grabs him and pulls him. Izuku cries out in shock. His head is placed into someone's shoulder. Someone was cradling him. Izuku glances around the room. The walls were gone and he can see they were bent in different directions. I might have to talk with your mother and Kachan, All For One said. He sounded angry. What? I'll never understand why people focus so much on quirks now. It's a good thing accepting quirks. Back in my days, quirks were hated and feared. Anyone with a quirk was arrested or beaten to death. All For One starts to walk through one of the broken walls. Now quirks are worshipped, and the quirkless are ostracized. How the tables have turned. All For One chuckles emptily. All For One walks past the broken trees. Society is awful. It should have burned UA. I should have burned UA. All those dorms to the ground. Maybe I'll still do that later. A purple warp opens above them. Darkness surrounds him and he's suddenly in another building. It's dark and cold. He looks and sees the screens again. After we're done, I'll bring the League here. They must be losing their minds right about now. All For One places him in his chair and sits on one of the arms. Bear with me with just a few more hours. We're almost done. You're almost there. Chapter 24. Summary. In this house, we will have all the dads for Izuku Midoriya. How did this all go to shit so quickly? Aizawa asked. His head was resting on the table in front of him. Nezu sighs. I had thought the League would come later. I didn't expect this to happen so soon. This wasn't logical. Aizawa glances at some of the remaining staff in the room. Midnight, Present Mike, and Snipe. Vlad and 13 were watching over the dorms. Power Loader was with Sermentos in Recovery Girl's office, getting their minor injuries taken care of. Hound Dog and Ectoplasm were taken to the hospital for their broken ribs, concussions, spinal problems, and broken arms. Aizawa rubs at the bags under his eyes. 2 students and a staff member are gone. The barrier is gone and destroyed. A corner of the building is dust. The dorms were attacked. Class 1A's dorms were targeted. The grass was on fire and the stairs were dust. Anything else anyone wants to add to this mess? Hisashi opens and closes his mouth. Nezu bows his head. There are markings on the walls. Someone carved a message. What did it say? I believe it said Kachan. Midnight leans back in her seat. Parents are calling. They want their children back and away from UA. 2 students have already been pulled out of UA already. Great. Aizawa goes to get up from his seat, but Nezu's voice makes him pause. I know this isn't the right time but I wish to question Katsuki Bakugo after this meeting. I wanted to know if you'd like to join me. Aizawa's tired eyes light up with anger. Yes, he replies. Hisashi snorts. I'm supposed to be the loud one here, Sho. Hisashi tries to lighten the tension in the air. Aizawa's shoulders relax and he rolls his eyes. Would any of you like to retrieve Bakugo? Nezu questions with a tilt of his head. Hisashi's face is suddenly serious. I want to. All right, this meeting is now over. Nezu stands on his chair with a grin. He jumps on the table and walks over to Aizawa. Aizawa sighs and tilts his head back. Nezu hops in his scarf and curls around his neck. To my office, please. Aizawa stands up and walks outside the door, with a short wave to the others. Hisashi gets up and hurries towards the door. I'll see you all later. Gotta go. He rushes out the door and passes Aizawa and Nezu with a wink. He heard Nemuri laugh at him from the meeting room. Hisashi focuses on his shaking hands as he walks towards the dorms. He walks to 1A's dorms and rushes through the doors. He's standing in the common area with all 1A looking at him. All their eyes land on him and he puts on a big grin. Yo, yo, what's up, everyone? He yells out and does a little dance. He points at them and finds Bakugo sitting with Kirishima, Sero, Ashido, and Kaminari. His body tenses with anger and sorrow. How did someone get this bad? It couldn't just be... No, maybe it was. Why? Present Mike. Todoroki jumps off the couch and runs to him. Is there any news? Did you find... He raises his hands. Whoa, take a second and breathe. You gotta be more chill and... Did you find Midoriya? Todoroki yells. Asui steps out from behind Todoroki. Did you find Midoriya and Sero? Is there any word on All Might? She frowns. Her voice was full of worry and stress. Everyone looked stressed. Bakugo looked annoyed and angry. That only made Hitoshi madder. No, we haven't heard or seen anything. Everyone is still recovering and we are trying our best to find everyone. He spoke calmly as he kept his eyes on Todoroki. Bakugo, please come with me. Principal Nezu and Eraserhead want to talk to you. President Mike turns on his heel. He kept his hands clenched and his fingers dug into his palms. Abuse, bullying, discrimination. He didn't understand this boy anymore. Izuku Midoriya was kind, caring, selfless, and an outstanding human being. Who could beat him into the ground just for asking to play? Who could yell and scream at him for saying hello? Who would... The hell do those two want? Bakugo growls out and stomps behind him. President Mike keeps walking with his eyes forward. They wanted to talk about Izuku Midoriya. Huh? What about that nerd? Hisashi turns around and glares at the angry boy. That nerd's name is Izuku Midoriya. His hero name is Deku. Hisashi doesn't remember the last time he was this angry. Maybe when he saw Hitoshi with a muzzle on his face at the orphanage? Bakugo takes a step back and his eyes widen. For a second, they lose the anger, and shock is there. What? Call him Izuku, Midoriya, or Deku. When we get Izuku back, I will be having a talk with him about that goddamn hero name. He marches back to UA and stomps through the destroyed walls into the doors. What the hell bit you in the ass? Bakugo says from behind him. He sounded out of breath. You'll find out later. He stomps through the halls and goes straight to Nezu's office. He doesn't say anything else to Bakugo. He might explode if he does. I'll be staying here to escort you back to the dorms after your meeting. He leans against the walls and bites his lip. Bakugo looks so very confused. All right. He goes to push the door open, but Hisashi puts a hand on his chest. Before you go in, I have to ask. Ask what? Bakugo glances at the hand on him. What is Izuku to you? Deku. Bakugo stops himself and inhales sharply. He's what? A rival? A friend? An ally? What is he? Hisashi screams, his quirk almost activated. Deku he's just an extra to me. He's definitely not my friend, and he's just... Fucking hell, I don't know, he's just an extra, okay? Bakugo snarls. Hisashi's eyes shut and he opens Nezu's door. Go. Bakugo stomps through the door, and all Hisashi wants to do is hug Izuku and scream. Alright everyone, that is the end of chapters 23 to 24 for Fuck Bullies. Again, All for One is doing a little too much in trying to help Izuku, which I don't think is going to actually help him in the end. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon.